All right, let's move on then to, my question is this, how many Super Tuesdays are there in a year? I'm getting confused. I've lost track. Do we use Roman numerals like they do with the Super Bowl? I'm not sure, but thank goodness we have an expert on the line, one of my all-time favorite people to speak to and have on the show because she makes it so much better. Talk show host and author. Ladies, can we talk? Political analyst extraordinaire, Debbie Georgatos. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on, Neil.
It is a pleasure indeed, Debbie. Another big night, and it was a clean sweep for Donald Trump. This had been predicted now for some time, that Northeast corridor, that's his backyard.
Absolutely. They are 5 states where Donald Trump was going to win handily, and he did. And, you know, to his credit, he did have 2 of them where he got to 60 or above %. And so that's a big deal with 3 candidates. So you can't take that away from him. But there are also states where in the fall, in the November elections, those states, maybe Pennsylvania is in question, but the rest of them are all going to go Democrat. And so they aren't voters who are going to help us get over the finish line in the fall.
Yeah.
Against Hillary.
Do you think, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, that this morning Ted Cruz is toast?
I think a lot of them are saying that. My thought is different on that. I think that where we are right now is that Ted Cruz and John Kasich working together, whether people like that or not, their mission is to keep Donald Trump from getting to the 1,237 votes you have to win, delegates you have to win on the first ballot in the GOP convention in July. And I think it's possible that they can do that. I think Indiana, the next big primary coming up on May 3rd, this coming Tuesday, is going to be pivotal. It's a really big deal in Indiana, whether Ted Cruz can possibly pull out a victory there.
He has apparently a sizable evangelical population in that region, which is why he wanted to cut this deal with John Kasich.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing. I've actually thought all along that the Cruz campaign, I think Ted Cruz is more of a mainstream candidate than people might think. And this focus on evangelical voters, while they are really important and they signify a set of values and morals, I think his positions on a lot of issues are really kind of heart and soul conservative. And I think of Indiana, this is not to diminish Michigan or Texas or any other wonderful state, but Indiana is a little bit of a bellwether kind of state. It's kind of a heart and soul of America state. So I think it's a good state for him to be spreading his broader message, not just to the evangelical voters, but his message on taxes and foreign policy and other issues where I think maybe he can touch the hearts of those voters, because Donald Trump continues to run a campaign where it's a lot of slogans and not a lot of depth.
You know what popped into my head this morning on the way in, Debbie, was I'm just wondering, and it's obvious that Cruz has a leg up when it comes to Indiana, but I just wonder if Trump's running the table last night makes Cruz limp into Indiana and appear like damaged goods.
Yeah, I think that the Cruz campaign should be really open, talking about, this is one segment of America. These were predicted wins, just like, Texas was a predicted win for Ted Cruz. I think that the momentum is going in some favor, but I think it would be wise for the Cruz campaign to openly say, yeah, we had 5 states, and they were going to be Donald Trump's from day one or from early on in this campaign, and so now we're back to and running through all the states where he has won. I think, because Indiana could be a momentum shifter if Ted Cruz can pull it out. Yeah,
and looking at the left, Bernie was able to grab Rhode Island. That didn't come as a huge surprise. So Hillary took 4 out of 5. Bernie said that after last night he was going to reevaluate. I'm not sure what that means. It doesn't sound like he's going anywhere until after California.
I think he will hang in there. I think that Bernie Sanders is enough of an ideologue and really is committed to the values he is saying that he so strongly stands for, that I think he stays in the campaign even if he's internally concluded he cannot win the nomination, because he cares about having his message of essentially socialism be spread more broadly in America. So I don't think he'll stop talking unless he runs out of money, and he won't run out of money.
Let me ask you this. We've noticed a softening over the past several days by rather warm comments from Donald Trump regarding Marco Rubio. Now, Rubio has been completely silent and completely out of the picture. He still has more delegates than Kasich. Do you suppose, he's been out of the race for 6 weeks, so do you think that maybe those two are kind of warming to each other and that there might be the potential there for a ticket?
Yeah, I think there's talk actually by some of the insiders on Trump's side that they see Marco Rubio as a potential running mate. They actually think, and I just find that, I think that the conduct of this campaign has been unusual. I think the language and kind of mockery that Mr. Trump has engaged in this campaign has made it very hard for a lot of people to picture themselves as his running mate. I would think that'd be how Marco Rubio would feel.
Yeah.
Just the little Marco, all those kind of comments are just, but Marco Rubio, he may warm up to taking it. I think actually Donald Trump is probably going, if he wins the nomination, I do think he'll choose, or he'll at least extend the offer for VP to Governor Kasich, because Ohio is so crucial, because Governor Kasich makes Trump look a little bit more legitimate as an experienced, he's an inexperienced politician, and so Kasich brings experience to the ticket.
I can just see Trump and Rubio just butting heads constantly and spending 3 years not speaking to each other.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think Marco Rubio, for whatever people didn't like about his stance on immigration, much of what he said throughout his campaign, it grabbed your heartstrings. It was substantive. It was about America. It was about the American dream. It was all these, and he had enough specifics to him and enough experience that he convinced a lot of people that he was on very solid ground. And I can't see him wanting to be second to Donald Trump, who has just led a very different kind of campaign.
Yeah, you could see the expression on Rubio's face whenever condescending remarks came from Donald Trump that no matter whether true or not, they hurt deeply.
Oh, yes, and just it's humiliating to stand next to a man who's mocked you. It's just amazing. I don't know how much time we have, but I want to tell you something, your listeners, if I could. A quick thing I read this morning.
Yeah.
Because we get to the fall, we think, well, what's going to happen if it's Hillary versus Trump or Hillary versus Cruz? The turnout, the average turnout in the primaries on the Democrat side in this election cycle is 20% lower than the turnout in 2012. Meaning there is so much less enthusiasm, so little enthusiasm among Democrat primary voters for either of their choices. And I think it's really interesting when you think about how that squares against a GOP primary voting base, which is very upset with Washington, very upset with President Obama, and very upset, frankly, with the GOP. I think the GOP primary voters could be really motivated to turn out against a Democrat base that isn't.
Yeah, and if you look at, since you bring up numbers, if you look back at the last cycle, Donald Trump already has more than 2 million votes more than Mitt Romney had at this point in time.
Oh, yeah, and Donald Trump is bringing in voters to the GOP side, which is, honestly, I think, a mixed blessing. He is bringing in Democrats are crossing over, people who have just felt, or for whatever reason, haven't voted recently and felt disenfranchised or can't relate to politics. He's bringing in new voters in the primaries, which is wonderful. I do wonder whether they will turn out in the fall and whether they will remain enamored of politics long enough. I think he's got he's built a populist movement, but what that means in terms of substance, what it means in terms of what you would stand for as a president, I think those are open questions.
Yeah, I want to hear specifics. Well, Debbie, I may as well warn you now. I'm going to bug you again after Indiana.
I sure hope you will.
Always a pleasure, Debbie. Thank you so much.
Neil, thanks for having me.
Debbie Georgatos there with us.